Some people are still on the road, but we're going to get going. And we thank our, what if we look, Baron even has some family here today. We won't introduce him yet, but we will say he's a phenomenal author. We love him, his work you can read easily and enjoyably. And you know, he uses music in his themes and in his work. And so today they're talking about poetry in motion, the melodic essence of his prose. Well, we do have because he always has a Western theme, and he is wearing cowboy boots today, but because his family is here, and if you're a relative of Baron Birtcher, would you raise your hand, please? No, that was many years ago. You can't bring that up now. That was a week in Malibu, wasn't it? All right. But there are a few family members here. But that is PJ. But we do have that we read for you. The last time Baron was here, we read this, and we of course offer this drink to everyone. When we finish our intro, we will all toast to our speakers, because what the hell good is a writer if you can't have a drink, right? So, and what the hell good is a musician if you can't have a drink, right? Or something really strong. But we do have this little story that we wrote, several of us, about Baron, and we just wanted to introduce you to him before he introduces himself. And it's called Out of the West, with a star on his vest. Ride the lawman, Baron Birtcher. Many bold renegades with guns and with blades failed against Baron Birtcher. But a songstress with a tune, Lady Janice, from a saloon, won the heart of Baron Birtcher. In each of his books, music lyrics expose crooks, from Roadhouse Blues to Hard Latitudes. Mike Travis fights crime in the 1970s. There's no prosperous or successful felonies. Lawman Birtcher has changed the story. From under the brim of a rancher's hat, flowing hair frames the face of a writer that today brings mystery and mayhem, Baron Birtcher. Thank you. But here's Maddie Margarita. Let's welcome her.
Hi, everybody. I am thrilled to be here with our speakers this morning. I book a lot of speakers for a lot of different events, and I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to this. With us today is Baron Birtcher. I just read the art for Baron's new book. It's going to fly. I'm just telling you guys right now, that's going to come out and be really successful. So I'm excited about that. And also with us is Steve Wood. We're going to let Baron and Steve introduce each other, because I tried to write their bios to introduce them, and they were like 3 pages long each. So I know you're going to hear them and not me, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Baron and Steve, and they're going to talk about writing lyrical, it's funny, we were talking about writing music and prose, and you often hear prose described as lyrical, so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Baron.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm Baron Birtcher. Thank you all for being here. This is my favorite group to talk to. This is, you guys are serious, focused writers, and I'm always so impressed by what's going on. And just so that we get a sense, how many people have published work out there? Sure. Wow. And how many people are working on a work in process right now? Okay, that's everybody, right? Brilliant. Well, this is why it's always so much fun, and we're going to leave plenty of room at the end of this so that you can ask. We can have a conversation about things. I had a couple of remarks before I introduce Steve, just about putting emotion on the page, which is kind of the subject matter that we're talking about today. And to me, the cornerstone of getting that done properly is authenticity. And it's remembering that your characters, be they anamorphic cats or real live humans, It doesn't matter. These characters have to be motivated by authentic motivations. And typically, I don't think that a real-life villain is sitting around twirling his mustache, viewing himself as a villain, and trying to come up with villainous things to do. It is one-dimensional and cartoonish, so keep it real. Likewise, your hero. I don't think that a hero considers himself a hero. He's simply doing what he does. So bearing that in mind, I think that when we're putting emotion into our characters and when we're putting that emotion onto the page, one of the very first things to be mindful about is just the authenticity of making sure that each of your components is drawn from life and drawn from your life. It reminds me, there was a quote by Ernest Hemingway. Someone asked him later in life, how did you become such a wonderful writer, and what's your secret? And he said, well, first I lived. And it's the truth. This is what we have to do. A lot of self-examination has to go into our work. Again, even if it's comedic, comedy is often mined out of tragedy and vice versa. So self-examination is a very important part of getting emotion properly authenticated and put on the page. The next thing that I wanted to note was a thing that I refer to as just tone. And it's important, I believe, certainly for me anyway, to have one's book, one's story, whatever it is that you're writing, a poem, whatever it may be, there's a tone. And that tone needs to carry through, and it needs to be, again, authentic, but it also needs to be consistent to itself. The tone needs to match the story. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read a tiny piece out of the upcoming book. This will be coming out in September. This is called Reckoning. It's the third book in the Ty Dawson series, which was so beautifully poeticized by earlier today. I appreciate that. Oh, I'll never be able to read this without glasses. Bear with me.
This is normally where I'd be playing a little piano in the background.
Da, 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 da. Okay. So in terms of tone, this is what I mean. And what I like to do, it has become kind of I guess a quirk now, but I like to try to set a tone for the book that I can remember as an author to maintain. And this is as much for me as it is for the reader, I think. And it's a little prelude that begins the book. It is called, I titled it A Transitive Nightfall. A Transitive Nightfall. It is a lyric I borrowed from the Grateful Dead. But shh. No child is brought into this world with any knowledge of true evil. This they learn over the passage of time. In my experience as a sheriff and as a rancher, I've found this precept to be true. Time passes nevertheless, even when it passes slowly. Here in rural southern Oregon, sometimes it seemed as if it hadn't moved at all, advancing without touching Meriwether County, except with glancing blows. That is, until the day it caught up with all of us and came down like a goddamn hammer. And this is how we begin. And I think that in terms of a tone-setting exercise, for me, it sets the guardrails of where we're going to be going. And the other little quirky thing I do in terms of craft was touched on earlier, and that is I always have a title before I start writing the book, because I like to have it thematically what's happening. I like to have the tone in my mind so that each chapter and each scene is relevant and consistent with that tone. I liken it to an album properly done. I would like it to read like an album, where you can listen to the whole thing, and it has moods, it has ups, it has downs, but it's of a piece. And it's a wonderful exercise to try to get it right. I can't say I always do it right, but I give it a shot. And the other thing that I do is to create a soundtrack. These books are set in the 1970s, so I create a little playlist for myself of music from the period. And again, create some guardrails for me, and that is all I will listen to during the months that it takes to write the book, just so that I remember to stay within the lanes and to stay within the tones and the themes of what was happening at the time. So, with that said, it's the reason that I asked my friend Steve Wood to join me today, and I'm so glad that he did. He is one of the preeminent songwriters in Southern California. He has, I'm going to use a little cheat sheet here. He's one of the founding members of the legendary local band, well, not local, legendary band, HONK, who will be playing in August at the Coach House. So,
August 5.
We're going.
well, there you go. They're sold out now.
I don't think so.
He has also toured with Beach Boys, Loggins and Messina, Chicago. He's done recording appearances with Jackson Browne, Paul McCartney, Moody Blues. He ran Kenny Loggins, he was the band leader for Kenny Loggins for a decade, and has appeared on I don't know how many albums, and just completed an album of his own that is charting brilliantly right now. So we can talk about that as well. But I've only scratched the surface, but this is Steve Wood. Thank you. So I just thought we could kind of yak a little bit about craft and the similarities and the differences and the things that we face, because I think that whether we're writing short form stuff, long form stuff, poetry, Steve, one of the things I neglected, Steve's done soundtracks for probably 24 IMAX films for which he's won, I don't know how many awards, a lot of awards.
9 best score.
9 best score awards.
Yeah.
So imagine, and I do want to get to this, maybe we can jump to that first, is the art of taking something visual and then asserting emotion on top of that comes from you. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to see where the cross section is between what we're doing when we're writing and what musicians are doing when they're writing.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's an interesting, I didn't really know what we were going to be talking about, so this is my brain. But it's always interesting to me that, and I'm sure you're aware that music dwells in a different place in your brain. It's more in the primitive lizard part of your brain. That they did a study where they went into the jungles where people had never seen anybody from civilization, and they played them pieces of music, Western music, and then held up a picture and said, you know, what does this remind you of? And they spot on if it was a sad song, they knew it was crying. If it was, you know, it wasn't just tempo; it was something primitive about it. And so, it's always an interesting kind of juxtaposition to how to link that part of your brain with something that's related in a certain way, in that what we're trying to do is transcend consciousness and reach an emotional level that doesn't have words. But when you're doing it with just words, it's very difficult to dig into that spot. And so the advantage, a certain way that a musician has, is that the music tells you something emotional to begin with. So that's already, you know, the majority of the flavor, and you put a lyric onto it that is wrapped in that particular flavor, and it helps to convey the message. So then, and then again, it depends. If you're a Bob Dylan, then you're not really quite so concerned with the milieu of the picture of it, because you're really relying on the lyric more. And I come more from the school of just the pure music of it, and for me, it's easy to write music. I mean, I just sit down at the piano and it just comes, and I can write constantly, and it's just, I don't know if it's a knack or whatever it is, but that's the easy part for me. The lyric, the words are the difficult thing, because they're literal. So everything you write, people are going to interpret them in their own way, but also hopefully in the way that you intend them to be. So when I write a song, generally it's, I do work a long time with the music, but the lyrics can take me weeks or months, because I really want to be very clear and say as much as I can about what I'm trying to say, and in a very short period of time. That's the hard part.
Does the idea come all at once, for instance? Are you thinking, I want to write a song about the ocean?
Sometimes. And I think as I get older, I'm more interested in saying something. Because I think with age you just become more emotionally connected to things, because you go through so many things. And now I'm not sure, this may be just purely a male thing, because we start with all this testosterone, which is a very powerful drug that I don't think would be legal if we didn't have it in us naturally. But it does tend to make, in my experience, a little less able to fall into other people's emotions. We're still kind of out there going after the woolly mammoth.
Hunting and gathering.
Yeah, and I don't know, this is just my experience, but as the years go by, that testosterone tends to fall off somewhat, and then you start to go, wow, I really do care about these things. So there's a lot of what I'm writing now are things that really affect me emotionally. And so
young men getting older grow sincere and much too dry.
yeah, I'm trying not to stay dry.
That was a honk lyric, by the way. For those of you.
But anyway, so sometimes it starts with a piece of music, and I think there's a classic story everybody knows where when Paul McCartney wrote Yesterday, it was originally called Scrambled Eggs, because he didn't know anything about the lyric. And I guess another thing that I would talk about is that there is that place in your own mind, and I know everybody knows this, that you go to that tells you something. And I know when I'm writing, I have to be very careful, because for one thing, I made a living partially as a commercial artist, which is film scores, writing for people, producing things, and it always doing some advertising. It's always towards somebody's goal. And there's always a narrow window somewhat what that goal is, and then there's a narrow window in what they're trying to achieve, what their market is. And this is my head's just spinning because of all these ideas. But to the pure writer, and I believe for each person to be able to reach that place where they're actually expressing themselves, you have to somehow break free of what you think you should be doing, because that's always on us. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because that's what makes our civilization, is that we learn how we should be. But at the same time, as an individual, somehow how do you cast that thing off and find out who you are without all the influences that have made you something that made you conscious. And so this is one of the beauties of music, is that you can get into that place because it's not literal.
I like that concept of casting off the expected, and very, very well said. We in the writing world often encounter, well, you're not supposed to do that. Never start your book by talking about the writer. Never do this. Always do this. If you're writing a mystery, somebody's going to die in the first 3 pages. You know what? That's all crap. Tell your story. You tell the story you are trying to tell, and you tell it in the voice that you have. Everybody in this room has their own unique voice, and only you can do it. Nobody can. I can't write a Nancy Kline book, but you can, and thank God. So that's what needs to get embraced, and there are a lot of those kind of rules that almost have no point.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think about often is that you have to be very quiet in your mind, because your mind and your soul has something in it that it will tell you, but it's very shy. And if this thing comes up and you say, oh, I know what this should be, it goes, okay, you're not listening, and it just shuts down. And so this is a thing that I'm constantly working on, is being ready for that quiet voice and then getting out of the way. And when that happens, and you're talking about lyrics and such, sometimes I struggle with song forever, sometimes it's just all the ideas come all at once, and I try to get them all. I just sit down at my computer and just type everything I can think about that has anything to do with what this concept is. It's just pages of stuff. And then all those ideas will never come to me if I were actually working on a song, because I'm already thinking about the form. So I have to let it just all flood out, and then later I can come back and go, wow, there's really some stuff in there. Then it's about editing, and I know all of you know that's the second stage and the really grinding part of the job. But most of the time, I think, is spent grinding, and occasionally the light comes, and then I just got to get out of the way and pray that I don't step in front of the light.
Wow. Getting out of the way is easier said than done, isn't it, sometimes? I often envy, well, I only envy it when I hear a really masterful song, when the key and the chord changes and the lyrics and everything are exactly tonally correct. And it evokes an image that it can make you cry or make you laugh or dance or something. Language is the only tool we get to use. And by language I mean word choice. And word choice can set a tone too. And I think word choice is kind of what I was hearing you speaking about just then. Word choices mean something, especially when you pair them with a song that might be in a minor key or something.
Yeah.
Well, that song sounds different than a disco song.
Yeah.
And word choices matter.
Yeah, and so sometimes, you're also coming from a character, just like you're talking about. You try to set a tone with lyrics that you see the personality of that person. And so that's another place what you were talking about, staying on the tone. I could read something, for example, by the way, he was talking about this CD that I have, which I'm not really into selling, but this is one of the reasons that I ended up making a career working with other people, because there are some people that are so driven to be successful and nothing will get in their way, and those people need help, because many things will get in your way unless you have somebody to help you get them out of the way. And so for years I've been a film composer and music director for Kenny Loggins, all these different producing for people and writing for people, but I never had that drive to go out and say, hey, check me out, and that's neither here nor there. That's who you are. Some people's gift is selling, and they may not have a gift in the production of what they do, but they're so good at selling, and we see that so much now with the internet. So here's a particular song. And I came with a bunch of music to play, but now that I know that we're talking more about,
Oh, good. Play all.
we might get to that. But this is a song that's on the album, and I'm just going to read the lyric if I can.
The title of the album is
Junk drawer.
Junk Drawer. I was going to let you say it because it sounds
Well, it's-
dismissive. But we'll come back to that because I love the idea of that. And you can tell us a little bit about
Well,
the title came about.
I'm not being able to play the piano while I'm looking for something. Talk about the fact that all the time that I was doing all this work for other people, I was still writing for myself. And I would do full production and do the whole thing. It's like, what am I going to do with this? It goes in the drawer. It's in the junk drawer, even though it's fully finished. Especially most of the time I was writing it, the internet was not quite so pervasive where you could just upload stuff. So I had all this music that was sitting there, and then when I finally retired, and that meant I stopped doing work for other people, I just started pursuing the quiet voice. And I went back and kind of finished all these songs and made them so that they somewhat fit the tone of the whole album. And so that's why it's like, here's the junk drawer, here's everything that's been sitting down there. So, but I've got this one guy, and I'm always fascinated by this particular person, and have a bunch of songs that he's singing. And this is kind of a boogie-woogie song, but it's that the guy that thinks he's God's gift to women. And so it's a boogie-woogie. I got some money, gonna shoot out the light. I got dead presidents for my posse tonight. We're gonna saddle up and tame this town, unless I decide we gotta burn it down. Everywhere I go, there's gonna be a party tonight. Hey, all you rookies who always say, I'll never get anywhere but in your way. You'll be making the sign of the cross when you taste your humble pie with suffering sauce. Everywhere I go, there's gonna be a party tonight. Ooh-wee. I'm gonna turn the night into day. Ooh-wee. I'm gonna hit the wall before I hit the hay. I'm gonna need love, but I'll find it fast. I never worry that it might not last. So what if she only wants to call me honey? So what if she only wants me for my money as long as she kisses me and calls me honey? Everywhere I go, there's gonna be a party tonight. Ooh-wee. When you see how amazing a man can be, ooh-wee, you're gonna wish that you were me. When I walk into a bar, I'm gonna draw me a crowd. I'm a Harley Davidson, my pipes get loud. Hey mama, look at your baby boy, all grown up and spreading love and joy. Everywhere I go, there's gonna be a party tonight. And that is Steve Wood. So, but that is keeping that, that egocentric, hairy-chested gold chain, or whatever the guy is, that picture of a guy, try to stay within that tone, as it were.
Yeah, and the word selection, I loved how you did that, and how you colored that scene. And you, because of the nature of music, you don't get to take 400 pages to do it.
That's the hardest part, because I can write 10 pages really quickly, but to get it all down into a very short song, that's the killing part. And the other thing too is you get a lot of really good ideas that it's like kids that you have to kill. That's a good idea, but you have to judge who your favorite kids are.
And we've all been there, right? Who doesn't have an unfinished work in a drawer somewhere, or a finished work in a drawer that's not really finished? I know I do.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? Yeah, exactly. No one doesn't have that.
So, as long as we're on the subject of me, which I'm just endlessly fascinated by. I have a friend up in the sound booth who went up there, and maybe we can just play a couple of pieces for you. The first one I want to play is, it's called Bird Song, and I was doing a film, and Greg McGillivray, for whom I did a ton of work, and he's just the greatest guy ever. It was about a place called Raja Ampat. It's a documentary, and it is down in Papua, which is right at the equator. And the reason we went down there is he's trying to show people that if we have we've tried to help these people in these areas where they have coral reefs, and it's the most biodiverse place on the planet. The Indian Ocean is super deep, the Pacific is super deep, and they all come up here, and then there's this huge upwelling of biomass, and so it brings all these different species together, and it's also a meeting place between those two oceans. So it's the most amazing place you could possibly imagine for diving. And the locals, the way they tended to fish was to throw a stick of dynamite and blow up the reef and then take everything that floated to the surface. So the goal is to go down there and just show them, and to set up ecotourism and show them that with sustainability they can actually make a living in a different way. So he took me there to to get a feel for the locals and see what's happening. And I went to this island, it's just out in the middle of nowhere, and just stayed in this little bure, and I was like, what am I doing here? I don't have any idea what I'm doing. And so I had a little recorder, and I kept hearing, there's so many birds, it's a jungle, and you look at it, and you just think, man, this is just frightening. I just seen so many World War II movies, and I know there's somebody up in a tree. And so anyway, I kept hearing this one bird that kept singing this song, and I was like, my God, that is like the coolest little blues riff. And so in the morning, like before the sun came up, I set an alarm and went out and put a recorder out in the jungle, and then, set it for 2 hours or whatever, and then later I took it back and I just laid it all in my computer, and I could see the waveform, so I could see where birds were singing, and I took, oh, here's a crow sound, I'll stick that over here, here's another crow sound, here's this bird, and then here's the lead singer of this thing. So, and that, like I say, it sounded like a song to me. And then I had this like $50, guitar, acoustic guitar, and I had a little jar full of toothpicks and a closet door, and I tuned the guitar really low to make a bass. So anyway, this is that sound, and hopefully it works. My good friend Tommy Davies is up there with his head sticking out the window. So try if you can to play, and he's going to have to switch off the mic, but try if you can play the bird song. It's down at the very bottom of the computer. This will take a second.
Papa, when you get it.
Papa.
Good. So anyway, that is really one of those things of letting somebody else or something else come into you and then making something out of it.
Well, I don't know if you're a believer in this, but I really truly am. You can paint that kind of picture with words too, if you are open and mindful to it. Do you cotton to that?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, there's a surprise to the sound. The sonic thing is just, I love sound. You know, I mean, my house doesn't look very good, but it sounds great. And I'm just gonna, not to get too far into this, but just to play one more song while we have this thing going. This is a song that came to me, and this has never happened before, in a dream. Almost fully fledged, and it was right before I woke up, and I was able to pretty much get it down. And this happened just as my mother was about to pass away. So, it's called Hello, My Friend. Hello, my friend. See it? Hello, my friend. Hopefully this is working.
Are these both from Junk Drawer?
This one is.
Hello, my friend, hello. I don't stop the things that darkness brings. I won't turn out the light. I used to think tomorrow meant forever, at least when I imagined you and me. I dreamed 1,000 futures, friends might disappear. I never did imagine you might not be here. Hello, my friend, hello. I don't want you to go. I know you'd hate to see me cry, so I won't say goodbye. Hello, my friend, hello.
Well, again, what a perfect example of melding chord structure and tone with a very sweet, heartfelt, kind message and word choices that are tender and kind and somehow kind of lighthearted too, light-spirited as well. That's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, it's trying to not be pulled down into it,
Yeah.
kind of stay above it
Yeah, well, and you did. Well,
till now.
That's right. That's right. I have a hanky here. for you.
I know.
Thank you for the hand.
Maddie, would this be a good time to just?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
You've got time. Yeah.
So with all the people you've worked with, have you, are there any, I'm talking in terms of craft now, writer craft, musician craft. Are there any people that stand out? We don't have to name names, but any
name names.
or you can. Qualities that stand out that have really kind of become things that you've assimilated that have made you a better writer.
Yeah, but I mean, I think being a better person is the thing. I mean, I do.
First you live.
Yeah, and I just think that the monopoly of the people that I have worked with that impressed me, that I just said, I want to be more like that person. It was based on a character aspect of that. And thank you. Recovering from that song. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say just quickly, I did work with Kenny Loggins for 10 years, and we were talking a little bit beforehand. He's just super gifted in so many ways, and he has that thing of really wanting to be famous and really wanting to be popular and really wanting to be influential. And so that's a real driver. And he's full of ideas, but at the same time, he had no time to learn anything about music. It's just, and so he can, I shouldn't say nothing because he can play guitar. He did learn how to play guitar and chords, but he doesn't know anything about, he doesn't know a verb from a noun, as it were, in the musical terminology. And so, part of my work with him was to just help him. He heard something and I could help him find it. But at the same time, he was so driven, and this is such an interesting thing because I don't have that drive, but I did see what that was, and he was so driven towards that he was a specialist in a way. And so he had to have other people to help him move forward with all the problems that were going to happen that he didn't know how to deal with. And I learned a lot from that as well because I'm similar in a certain kind of way. And so for example, when I started doing films, it was always kind of pop instruments and pop music, and then suddenly I had to do a job with an orchestra, and I was like I just wanted to be a Beatle, you know. And so that he helped me see that, okay, you can move forward. If you don't know something, just say, I can do it, and then figure it out. And another thing that I would say is I've worked with a lot of famous people that have two types of characters. One is very gracious and non-egocentric, and then the opposite. And so, as an example, I think Brian May, I did a film with him from Queen, and spent a bunch of time in his studio hanging out with him. Just the most gracious guy. I mean, the first day, you know, he's got this, I guess you'd call it a man cave, but it's a giant estate, you know, and it's this beautiful house, and then the carriage house is the recording studio. And I went to work with him, and I'd written a bunch of stuff, and a lot of it was on acoustic guitar, and I was like, I don't really play acoustic guitar. It's going to be a lot of work, but let's get to work. You know, here's a guy that, you know, he knows he's going to look bad, but he just says, okay, let's get to it. He's not worried about his ego. He just says, let's do this thing. And, you know, just spending a day with a guy who's so gracious, go into his house. He's got all this stuff, you know, like when the kids were into Star Wars, there's a bunch of old pinball machines. And then he was really interested in stereoscopic photography. And I don't know if you know, but when Queen started, he was actually living at the base of a mountain because he was trying to get his degree in astrophysics. And
A PhD.
yeah, he was trying to get his doctorate. So anyway, the band started to put that on hold. But anyway, he fell in love with this stereoscopic photography. You know, that thing where you have a picture and it has two photos and you look through a viewer. And there's some legendary guy in that field in Europe that, you know, it's like the top of the charts for that type of thing. And so Brian had bought all of the equipment he could find anywhere around the country. Nobody knew really exactly the chemistry of how this guy did it. Brian spent forever figuring it all out. And then there's a book that this fellow put out, whatever, 120 years ago, of all these places. And so then Brian went out and took pictures now with all of that guy's equipment of what those places look like, framed exactly the same. So, you know, and this is just the kind of thing, and now he does have his, he did go back and get his doctorate. So, and then, okay, not to get too deep into it, but that night, he said, oh, would you like to go see our play? You know, We Will Rock You was playing in the theater, you know, in London. So, yeah, I'd love to go. So you go, and then you're sitting in the great seat, and then a break comes, and somebody comes to get you, gives you a bottle of champagne, and you go backstage and meet everybody. It's like, he didn't have to do that, you know. And how can a guy be at that level and be so thoughtful? Because he doesn't have to be thoughtful. And that's the other thing is you do gain power, and everybody does laugh at your jokes. And if you don't want to look at yourself, you cannot look at yourself just fine because everybody else is doing the looking at you for you, you know. And but they're seeing you the way you want to be seen because they're getting something from you. And that we see this in politics, we see this everywhere. And I'm attracted to those people that are transcendent of that and see the spirit of others, you know. So that's a person, and I've had a lot of people like that, and I've had other people that was like, well, I don't want to be anything like that person.
Do you collaborate much, or do you prefer to write solo?
No, I don't collaborate much.
I have noticed in your work that there's some.
Yeah, it's mostly me. I mean, of course, when it's a film, I have to hire a bunch of people, but the junk drawer is mostly all me playing all the instruments, except for my son, who's a drummer and also a good musician. So, and my wife, Beth, who's also a musician.
Well, it's fortunate to be surrounded by talent.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! I just lost it. I was going to ask you an incredibly insightful question.
That's my new saying is my memory is a memory.
Yeah, it just happened just now. So, as writers, often we have different names for them, but we have beta readers, and we have our writers groups, and we have that sort of thing where we finally, after months and months of hibernating and writing our manuscript and polishing it, and we put it out there for a couple of people to read, which can be, it's an act of courage on one hand, but on the other hand, you know, one needs to have a very trustworthy tribe, in my opinion, to do that, because one cannot unhear bad advice. So, you know, surrounding oneself with people whose opinions you value, I think, is very, very important. Do you do that with your music, or do you just let it be, so to speak?
Well, it's interesting because one of the last songs I wrote was just about that very thing of your best friends are the ones that tell you what you need to hear. You're easily be surrounded by people who tell you what you want to hear. But in my case, it's pretty much my wife. We have been together for a long time, and I just trust her judgment. She sees me in a way that is not trying to protect anything. She's just honest. And because we've been together a long time, I've learned how to take that. So yeah, that's pretty much
That's your sounding board.
that's my sounding board.
And is that a lesson that you learned the hard way, or is that just how it developed?
I think it develops when you take yourself out of the center of the universe.
Well, when you're in a band, a band dynamic is a very different thing. It's a by definition a dysfunctional family.
Well, it is, but this HONK thing, for example, was dysfunctional in its own way. We were poised for giant stardom and had everything going our way, and Aerosmith opened for us at the convention, and all these things happened, and then
Say that again.
we had some members of the band that didn't
Right.
want to be successful.
Right.
Let's just put it that way, and it kind of blew up. What were we talking? Oh, I was going to say. So you know, and then early on, when you're in a band, there's a lot of protection, and when somebody says something, you're not really settled in your skin yet. So when somebody says something, you take it personally, and you think it's an attack. And then also, when you see something really good about them, it kind of makes you a little angry because you're jealous. And I mean, I'm just speaking from my perspective, but I think that's one of the things about being younger. And then as you get older, now I'm in a band, it's a bunch of older people, and I think the youngest guy is 60. And they're all kind of like the top people from this area from all these years. They're all kind of leaders of different bands. There's one reggae guy, there's a British rocker, my wife is kind of folky sort of, and you know, and an R&B singer, and it's just all over the map. And everybody's really good, and we just totally get along, because we're at that point of like, well, I know who I am, and I know who you are, and there's no competition, and I appreciate what the road that you went down, and that you earnestly developed yourself into who you are. You know, and so that's the fortunate thing of not being famous and being able to stay in the business in a way, and you know, because I'm sure the Eagles don't get along.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. Well, can we use a real world for instance? Yeah, probably one of the better known songs that HONK did is credited to a band collaboration. The Pipeline Sequence is, I believe, a band collaboration.
Yeah.
How did that manifest, and how do you get, because I know several of you, and there's nobody that isn't a strong personality.
Well, you know what? When we started that film, we had our serious music that we were doing, which was, we're trying to be sensitive singer-songwriters. And then Greg came to us. We didn't really know him that well, although some of us were surfers, we knew who he was. But he wanted music for this movie, and he had a yellow legal pad, and I need 5 minutes of music for kind of country style for his North Shore. I need blah, blah, blah. And we're all like, yeah, okay. We'll just, like that song, we actually said, we're going to try to write this song in less time than it takes to play it. So when you lower your expectations, it's easy to cooperate. But a lot of times you actually hit on something because, again, you've actually gotten out of the way. And so I think a lot of what worked about this music is we really did get out of the way because we didn't care that much. So a lot of things came out that if we were protective, it wouldn't have happened.
For instance, that song, recording-wise, is that like a live in studio thing, or was it there? Because it has a live in studio.
Well, everything was done on an 8-track, so there wasn't much overdubbing to do.
Okay. So it kind of came out the way that it was written.
Yeah. And I think in a certain way that it fit the time, because we were just, the spirit of the 70s was captured there, of the local beach thing, because there's country music, there's jazz, but it's all spirited and youthful, not very sophisticated.
It's still a timeless, we were mentioning this earlier, I find it to be a timeless, brilliant album to this day. And it's recorded quite well. It ages nicely. So again, HONK is playing in August, on August 5th, at the Coach House. If you get a chance, you gotta check it out.
Bring your earplugs.
Well, super fun. Is anybody opening for you? You got anything?
Oh, Jack Tempchin, the guy that wrote
is he?
Peaceful, Easy Feeling.
Jack is one of the legendary writers of Southern California, like Jackson Brown and Hoyt Axton and Mark Turnbull, Steve Wood. There's a wealth of talent around here that's pretty remarkable.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So when I'm thinking about when you write a book or a story and you're writing a song, so you have a story that you tell, and then you have, or do you have a feeling that you want to evoke when you do that? So what comes first, the story or the feeling, or how does that happen? Because like you were saying, to set the tone, you have to know what the tone is. And when you're writing, do you say, okay, this is the feeling I want to evoke, or is this the story I want to tell? Or how do they mesh?
For me, I always know what the story is going to be in an arc sort of fashion, but it comes to me in scenes, and every scene has its own requirements, and some we're trying to illustrate a character's tenderness or their vulnerability. In others, you're trying to illustrate a character's dishonesty or some other quality. Again, back to that authenticity thing. You're trying to show your reader who this person is by what they do. And the scene speaks to, I try to let the scene speak in terms of how that tonal quality comes out. And that's how it works for me.
So before you move on, Baron, so how do you do that? Do you do that in action or dialogue or language? I mean, where is the music, the lyrical, the orchestration of that coming from? Is that the dialogue? Is that from, what is that from, setting or?
I start with setting first because it tells me where we are. And I like to get, if anybody who's read my stuff knows that there's a lot of just references to what's going on outside the windows. So that, because to me, it informs how we behave. You know, when it's rainy and dreary out, we behave a certain way. When the weather's like it is today, we behave a different kind of way. And we want to do different kinds of things. So when I'm thinking about a scene, I'm trying to think about, well, what kind of atmosphere would evoke what I'm trying to get through. And if I'm trying to get across an idea where a poignancy, for example, I would really like to have that happen either in the evening hours and in the quiet, because you're really kind of facing your own stuff in those moments. And you can't hide from yourself in those kinds of moments. So I start there, and then the dialogue, then I'll let the kids talk. But then you just let the characters talk. But they have to have their own voices. You have to let the characters talk. But your song did that. The character spoke. That's who that guy was.
I just want to say that one line in, I think it was Reckoning, where you say, I see the world, everything I've learned about the valley, or I see in this valley, I see through the ears of a horse. You know, that to me was like the essence of that character. And to be able to do that, and Steve, when you write, how do you do that and be so efficient and economical in the words, but evoke such huge emotion or a message like that?
It's prospecting.
Just trying.
It's really just, you're just hoping you find a nugget. And the more you search, the more you'll find.
Yeah. Well, do you write things down all the time?
All the time.
Yeah. Do you eavesdrop on people? I do.
No, but I mean, you know what? I mean, first of all, Tommy, I don't think we're going to play more music, so you don't have to stick your head out that window anymore. Thanks for your help. I get I go to see a songwriter or whatever, and I get so many ideas, but it's not what they're singing about. They just put me in the.
Yeah, they got a lot of views for you.
Yeah, it's just it's a little bit like when you say you listen to 70s music to write about the 70s. Just that creative spirit flowing. It just it turns me on. It's like, can't tell how many times I'm at a show and I got my phone up and I'm dictating ideas.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I do that too. Nancy.
Your soundtrack that you listen to while you're writing, are you listening to it while you're writing, or is it before and after?
Oh, for me, it's never. I have to write in total silence. I have to be inside my own head, and it's a weird place in there. And I can only do. I work for about 4 or 5 hours at a time. I try to do when I'm working on a book. I try to do it pretty much every day. It's 6 days a week, and then I got to take a walk after that. I need a day to just do something else. But I really don't like to watch the news. I really don't like to get. I really want to stay in Ty Dawson's world. Just again, it's guardrails. I think of those as guardrails, so that I can stay as authentic to what's going on at the time and what was concerning to him at the time. And the music speaks to me that way.
Do you think you would ever go to a location and live there to absorb that as well?
Oh yeah. Oh, I would definitely. Yeah, in fact, as I was listening to your bird song, I was thinking, oh, yeah, what a blessing that was. Yeah.
Oh, a comment to you and then to you, but your song.
I'll repeat it.
Well, your song "Hello"
Yeah.
took me back to my childhood, and I mean this in the greatest compliment. It almost felt like something Jim Henson would do.
That's nice.
And for your music, is it mostly lyrical, or do you get in some soundtracks from the period or something like that?
It's what it is. It's just it's a feeling. It's not so much the song, and this isn't the greatest hits of 1973. It's just how songs that will make me feel a certain way. For whatever reason, I was one of the songs that really stuck with me. Nobody can this maybe. I'm writing this Reckoning, and it's set in 1976. A lot of stuff going on there, and a song that just stuck with me, and I just kept listening to it again and again, was Pat Metheny, "As Falls Wichita, So Falls Wichita Falls," which is a 22-minute epic jazz thing. I don't know why, but that spoke to me, and I heard it again and again. And when I read this book, as we all know, when you write a book, you end up reading your own book about 11 more times, right? So as I was reading the 9th version, I'm thinking, man, that song is all over this thing, feeling-wise.
The color.
Yeah, yes, exactly, the color. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It sounds like kind of what you were referring to when you
Yeah. Well,
I know if I'm reading a Dickens book or something, I think in that time, the color and the language and the spirit of that time. And so similar thing, how you can actually chameleon yourself into the time and place.
Yeah, Baron, great job teasing out some wonderful emotions with Steve, and what a profound accomplishment with 9 best scores. Question about how they evolve. Do you find yourself having to view the final edit version of the film piece you're trying to write for, or does the editor and the cinematography work to your tune and they cut to the floor to make that work?
Yeah, it's very rare that it works in the latter way, because the music is just like aromatherapy.
Yeah.
The plot is what's important,
Yeah.
and you're just helping to create a mood. But the music starts early, and you're watching with the director and the writer possibly. What does this scene mean? Because you can add happiness, sadness, foreboding, fear, because sometimes that's not obvious. And so the music can give it a little bit of a like, oh, this looks happy, but something bad is about to happen.
But when your name, like today, the two of you, we got Indiana Jones with Baron Birtcher and Stephen Wood, on the marquee today. I find that interesting because John Williams is a remarkable writer, right? And I can't imagine those pieces get created after viewing the scene. I almost think that genius comes out and they create a scene for that great piece.
No,
that never happens.
That only happens in porno. You've heard. But I wouldn't know.
Okay, mic drop.
Baron, you're blushing.
I know, I don't even know
How
that.
about a little segue?
Oh my God.
Sampler.
How about a little segue?
Fire away.
I think I can surmise how you might answer this, but I want to know from Baron.
Yeah.
You are a musician, perhaps a musician before you were a writer. Do you find being a musician informs your writing and word choice? Do you hear in your head the flow, the sound of what you're writing?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to, when you start to dissect what am I doing and how am I doing it, it gets a little too meta, and it slows me down a little bit. But I think yes, definitely word choice, because I'm just a real big believer that word choices tell you everything, not only about your character, but it really tells you everything about the rhythm of your scene, and whether it's a tender scene or an action scene or whatever it may be. I never reached the level, not even close to the level of musicianship that Steve has achieved. So I wish I knew the language of music where I could know that if I do a suspended chord right here, it's going to feel like that.
Well, that's a word choice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is. I think that's the musical equivalent, isn't it? So yeah, it informs it somehow. I'm not sure how, but I like it. I'm really glad that it worked that way for me.
The reality is, for me, because I'm totally into voice and the sound of things, word choice is sometimes dictated also by the sound it will create, the flow.
Yes.
Do I want to stop or do I want to?
Oh yeah, absolutely right. And what kind of scene are you writing?
It's so interwoven. It's magic.
If you're writing an action scene, you want it to be staccato and brief and quick, and you want to get that going, and get that reader moving, get that heart rate going. But you must be careful not to do that where you don't intend it. Just like music, you gotta put those chords in the right spot.
That's the editing.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any? Sure.
So when you're writing the stories, both of you, when you're writing these stories, do you ever think, okay, I have to have an emotional map in my head, like the story when I was listening to your song, which was brutal, by the way. And if you hadn't prefaced it with what you did, I probably wouldn't have cried, but maybe. But it's the journey, it's the ups and the downs, and the happy. Okay, this is I'm lying here, I can just relax for a minute. Now I'm back up here to the emotional part. Do you think about that, Baron, too, when you're writing a book? Like you have the bridge and the hook and the chorus and, you know, the journey. Do you think about taking the reader on that journey? Or
I absolutely do. And there's in the, I don't know if there's a musical equivalent to this or not, but the ever-present silly conversation among writers is, you know, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? But anyway, I am an inveterate plotter. I really need to know what
so
I'm
do you
going.
plot emotion too, or just story?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I don't do it with that much advanced thinking. It's kind of a scene by scene kind of moment, but I know how it wants to be, and I know that I don't want to do 3 really heavy emotional scenes in a row. It's just too hard to slog through, I think, as a reader. I don't like that when I'm reading. So you do have to sort of weave the tone a little bit. What do you think?
Well, I mean, for me, it's sometimes I'm writing a song and it starts with music, and so then that does create an emotional thing. Then the lyrics have to write to match that. Then there's other songs that I write because the lyrics come first, and I tend to try to make those. They usually come more as a straight ahead kind of song that it doesn't change a lot of emotional. You know, a lot of pop music, it's just it's one emotion through the whole
Do you
thing.
write on guitar a lot?
I try to write on guitar because I don't know much about it. And, you know, the piano, it's just, it's always going to get complicated. And the guitar, I can't make it that complicated, so.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to keep my brain from going somewhere on the piano, but I can't stop it because.
I think that's a nugget that's a takeaway for me today, because it really is true. That's part of that getting out of your own way kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you do get too self-conscious, maybe, then you trip over yourself.
And also you just allow yourself to go really deep into yourself, which is fun for yourself. But if you're trying to convey things to other people, and especially also, you know, if it is complicated, everybody's going to have to hear it a bunch of times before they really understand it. And you know, if you write a simple song, they're going to get on the first play, and so you're always thinking, well, I do want people to like this. And this is some of the thinking things that I'm talking about that you have to get out of the way at some times. But at other times you're going, yeah, I want people to like this, so I've got to keep it, you know, like the proper balance of sweetness and salt. You know, it can't get too salty, it can't get too sweet, it can't do, you know. Whereas when you're letting your brain go, it's, oh, take where all these places it'll go, but it's too hard to follow. So that's always the thing and that's why I tend to write on guitar certain kinds of songs. It's like, oh, don't think about this.
That's really interesting.
One more?
Yes.
Kathy can ask a question, then you can ask another.
No, one more.
In my book 3, one of my characters decided to write a song, and I had no idea how to write a song, so I thought I might have to kill him off. Well, that night, it was the strangest thing. I woke up in this whole song, the lyrics and everything came, and I sat up, I got my cell phone, and I recorded it and singing it into my cell phone. My husband's sitting up wondering what the hell's going on. But I got it out. I wrote it out the next day and changed 3 words. But the second song I wrote for John, which made me want to kill him even worse, was harder to write. It was more difficult, and that's been going before. But I want to know, does songwriting become easier as you're writing a song? Do they often come to you in one, flow, the lyrics and the word and the tune?
No, not for me. They don't come that quickly. Occasionally they do, like I say, but most of the time it's just a slog.
So, question then: are the ones that just come all at once with the lyrics and the music more magical, more easier to do, to market? Or are the ones that you have to work at a little bit more?
Yeah, I think you're, the ones that come simple are probably the most marketable because they don't get that deep. And they don't get that twisty. But, you know, again, we're talking about the nuggets. That's the mother lode. When you wake up and the whole thing's there,
Well,
that's rare.
yeah, he had a specific
And did you-
emotion that he had to get out.
And did you sang it? Did you have somebody come up with chords or an arrangement?
I sang the whole thing, and it's actually published now by Garrett Miller, and it's on Amazon Digital right now. Now I'm looking for somebody to do my second song, but it's out there, and probably because John decided he's going to be a prolific songwriter on this new planet, I'm going to have to write a few more. Which is
Good luck.
a strange place that writing takes you.
It's just hard. I mean, it's hard to make a good song. And you know, it depends. If you're writing a country song, it's not that hard. And I don't mean that so much because it's supposed to be simple, and it's really almost a jingle level of writing, and
There's a structure.
there's a structure, and there's not that many stories, and I always say it's a jingle that's trying to sell the jingle. You know,
That's good, I like
it's
it.
kind of a little feedback loop. But the thing about it is, of course, there's some great country songs, so I'm not denigrating it, because, you know, a Willie Nelson song or some of these songs, it's like, how did you write that classic song that everybody just loves, and there's just not that much
Stick in
to
your
it.
mind, so.
Picked all the right words, got everything out of the way, didn't try to make it fancy, it's just a beautiful antique or whatever, you know.
Make sure to capture moods.
Well, thank you all very, very much. This has been super fun for me. I'm really happy that Steve was able to join today. I came away with some really fun nuggets, so thank you for that. Thanks for sharing the songs. Beautiful. You'll have some CDs out front, right?
I have some CDs.
And is anybody going to VoucherCon this year? Well, I know you will. Because I just want to throw out that PJ and I are going to be on a panel together at VoucherCon.
You have to carry me.
Yeah, right. So hope to see you there. That'll be good fun.
It's not
Thank you all for being here. This has been a great week.
Okay, well, I don't know about you, but my head is spinning right now. Going back saying, okay, now I have to write at a whole new level. My standards and expectations have been elevated, thanks to you both. So thank you very much. And I still forgive you for making me cry. But both Steve and Baron are going to be available after. They're going to be right out here. They have some stuff to talk to you about and that you might be interested in. So stop by when you're out there. And we have an idea for next month that it's summertime and it's a little more flexible. Maybe we would do a lit up kind of scenario here for our own writers. You know, you sit next to people and you don't know what they write. You hear their titles, but you don't really know a lot about their style and their book and what's important to them. So we're going to flesh this out a little bit, but we're thinking maybe we could get maybe 8 or so people to read a couple of pages, and then I'll interview you. We'll talk about the books. Everybody get to know you a little bit. We'll have a little fun. Maybe we'll have a little wine, who knows. And maybe we'll do that in August. Does that sound like something that you guys would be interested in? Yeah? Okay. All right, and then we'll go back to our regular format in September. All right, great. I'm going to turn the mic back over to Larry.
Thank you so much, Maddie. You want to give one of these?
Yeah.
And we have for both of you in addition to other gifts, but we do have our own
I feel like Vanna White.
brand. It's called Melodramatic. Melodramatic, and it captures a mood in the wine with, it's almost musical. And it's titled Melodramatic.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
And it tastes damn good. So,
Very nice.
and if you don't drink wine, well, we can head right to the corner. There's a bar right at the top of the hill here, which the whole town has, Clint Eastwood's been in there, everybody goes in there, you know, and they rarely come out.
Oh, and also, we're coming up, please, also, if you guys have fun, bring your friends. We're hoping we have such great programs to get the message out. I don't even need a microphone. So we encourage you to bring friends. You know, if you haven't joined, please join. If you know somebody who'd be interested, we're always here to talk about membership. We have a great website, SCWA no, it's southerncalwriters.org.
Yeah.
Membership, very inexpensive, and look what you
Yeah.
get as part of it.
Right.
And we did have today about 8 or 9 people who were stuck on the road. And we do film everything and put it in our library on YouTube so that people can see it. We get a lot of views for that.
I just felt like I was on PBS there for a minute.
It feels like Turner Classics to me.
Yeah, it was-
But isn't it wonderful to hear the reading and the music and how they blend? And Baron's work is so, it's melodic in reading. I like to say reader friendly, but that sounds so cliche. But it is so, as you're into it, you feel it. You feel the word, you feel the people, and you know, your song was just so the same way. You know, there's a poem that we learn in school, "Do not go gentle" into that.
Yeah.
But yours was so much better in the sense of, I felt the emotion of it. You know, the other one I felt like, ugh, you know, "Do not go gentle," God damn it. You know, so, but
I tried to get to the Jim Henson
Yeah.
spin.
but it was all right. You know, it was just really, but we get the message. We're just so spinning. But if you haven't read one, pick one up. You'll just get engrossed in it because you just feel it. You know, when I say you can feel a book, it's hard to say, but you feel a character. You feel all the emotion. You feel everything. You know, and some of them you do want to slap and punch, but it's just really tender.
All right, so
Thank you.
everybody follow us outside, and we'll be getting the bus to the coach house. What's the date?
August 5.
Okay, so do we get like special, if we all show up in like a?
No.
No. Hey, you can't blame me for trying. But keep that date on. I think that'd be fun if we could do that. All right, everybody, we'll see you outside. Okay, thank you, everybody.